I have a job for you.
Jeez, it's not another Ark, is it?
No, not again. This time I need a full-scale home renovation.
Noah Construction and Builders is your design and build partner. We do it all, from additions and dormers to full-scale renovations. Schedule your no-cost design consultation today. Visit us online at noahconstruction-builders.com.
Noah Construction and Builders. Through dreams we design, with vision we build.
Now, welcome to MuscleSport Media Live. Thank you, of course, Noah Construction-Builders.com, our title sponsor. No job too big nor small for those guys. WGBB 95.9 FM, 1240 AM on your dial. And I found out something today, Trevor. Anthony is not here tonight. My son Jimmy is taking his seat and keeping it warm, and he might be taking my seat. Him and Anthony will do the show together. I think they probably have better. Maybe we do. Maybe we'll make it like Ghidra, three-headed monster. We'll make it, right? Anthony told me that today is our 1-year anniversary that we started with you guys.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And Anthony is having fun in Philadelphia right now. He's going to a concert. He was supposed to do the cheesesteaks and the Rocky statue and the Rocky steps and all of that good stuff. He'll be back next week, but my son Jimmy is going to be here today. And last week we talked a little bit about baseball. I didn't want to do the same because it's kind of not that much has changed because the All-Star break kind of took some spots. So we're going to do a little hoops tonight, right, Jimmy? We're going to talk a little bit NBA offseason, what's been going on, draft and free agency-wise. There's been some interesting moves around the league, some with the Knicks and Nets, obviously across the board, all around both conferences. I just think it's something that's not in the news headline stuff right now, but a lot of good things have been happening that have been under the radar, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's been plenty of moves, a lot of activity this offseason, as we've come to expect with the NBA, probably the most movement in any league.
Mm-hmm.
And it recently came out today that TNT is trying to get their
I saw that. They're going to match Amazon's
offer.
So what happens to Chuck now?
I don't know. If he said he was retiring.
He'll come back.
But they also said that the NBA still wants to take Amazon's money. They don't want Warner Bros. And TNT's money, so they might try to take it to court. And so it might just be a way for TNT to get a little payment on the way out.
Bidding wars?
Well, just to say, we had matching rights. If you don't want it, you have to pay us $100 million, and we'll drop our. So it might just be a little negotiation tactic.
It might be. I hope TNT gets it, and I think Barkley.
Yeah, no one wants to watch games on Amazon.
No, I want to put on my TV and watch a ball game the way it's supposed to be. All of this streaming and all that. No. I don't want to be bothered with that. So that's actually an interesting thing, which is going to be covering the games. But as far as now, the Summer League, we're not going to really talk much about it. There's really not much to say about that. It is what it is. You get your youngsters in there. You get your first look at some of these guys that were drafted or second-year players trying to get some more time and showcase themselves. I did see, though, there was one guy, the Nets signed to a multi-year deal that was with their G League team last year, and we had a really good summer league. The name escapes me.
Keon Johnson?
Might be. I believe so.
Yeah.
He had a really good summer league. He averaged 22 or something like that. So they, obviously, a rebuilding team looking for some youth. They're going to have him full-time on the team. Last year, he was a two-way guy. Played a little bit in the G League with Long Island Nets and up in Brooklyn at the Barclays Center. As far as you could see, there's been some big names, even if they're maybe a little long in the tooth and there were bigger names a few years ago that have moved around this offseason. Why don't we touch a little bit base about that? Russell Westbrook is, he's always been one of my favorite guys, and he's lost a step, and that's why he's been changing uniforms a lot lately. So where is he now?
So Westbrook ends up in Denver this offseason, which is an interesting landing spot for him because we've seen that team start to lose some talent from their title team a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Bruce Brown left last offseason, great role player. This year they lose their starting shooting guard, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. He went to Orlando. Mm-hmm. So now that opens up some minutes in the backcourt. Russell Westbrook comes in. Maybe he can kind of, revitalize his career a little bit.
With a veteran team that's ready to win now. Obviously, they didn't have a great playoff last year. They're the defending champions going into the playoffs. and they got knocked out earlier than they expected. I think a guy like Westbrook is a good fit on a veteran team like that. That's why it's weird, because he's been with veteran teams and he hasn't. I can't. To me, like teams like the Clippers, it seems like a lot of guys that have talent go there and they just disappear. And kind of segueing into my next guy, Paul George, now going to a place that Knicks fans like myself and Anthony don't want to see him playing, and that's in Philadelphia.
Yeah, Paul George, joins Philly. Philly finally gets another star after the departure of Harden.
Mm-hmm.
They had a lot of expiring contracts and draft picks at the deadline last year. They weren't able to make a move happen for a star, but they get the guy they wanted in free agency. And he might not be the player he once was, but he's still a very good two-way forward. Yeah,
and another guy that's, a lot of movement after he was, a solid guy with the Pacers for all those years. If you remember with the last Olympics, he had that ugly injury. He got hurt in what was it, an exhibition game or a scrimmage or something?
That was a few Olympics ago. It
was a few Olympics ago.
That was
getting older.
2014.
Is that long ago? Wow.
Yeah.
All right. I'm getting
or something like that.
Getting a little butts, I guess. But Paul George has been moved around a lot since then, but he's still a talented player, and he doesn't have to be the shining star there. Obviously, Joel Embiid is the franchise player over there in Philly. That's a really good team that when they're healthy, like if Embiid's healthy, they might beat the Knicks last year. They almost beat them with Embiid, banged up the way he was. They went to a 7th game. But they did lose the guy the Knicks picked up, the backup point guard. So that's
Cameron Payne.
That's a good pickup for the Knicks and a loss for Philadelphia as well. So that's an off-season move that's, not a big one, but to me, and you know how I feel because we've discussed this at home a lot, the Nets-Knicks trade. I know, and Anthony, we touched on it a little bit a few weeks ago when it first happened, and he's all for it, really happy, thinks that's the finishing move for the Knicks to, possibly get a title out of it. I still don't think that puts them above Boston, and that's... Yeah, that's their competition, and Philly too.
Yeah,
now,
too. And even you can't forget Milwaukee. I know they had a rough season, but when you have Giannis Antetokounmpo, you have Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Yeah,
so.
And they still have Chris Middleton. They still have a good team. So yeah, for me,
on paper, I like the Knicks roster. Bridges is a good fit there, a good player. Mm-hmm. They've got the Villanova connection, but. Again, I agree with you. I don't think it puts them above a team like Boston.
He's not a superstar.
And you gave up a lot of draft capital to get him.
5 ones, and then a swap. Listen, today those picks don't mean anything, but...
In the future, you could have a season where Brunson gets hurt, Bridges gets hurt, Anunoby wants a trade, and all of a sudden you gave up
picks.
A top 5 pick to Brooklyn.
Yeah, and speaking of Boston, that's your... team that you follow, they were able to put together that championship team by way of a trade like that.
Yeah.
With the Nets.
The reason the Celtics are the reigning champs is because
those two guys that they got from the Nets picks.
They took a deal on some future draft picks, not knowing what they would be, and they ended up turning into 2 All-Stars that lead you to a title. And now the Celtics, because they drafted those guys, were able to extend them both using the cap.
Using their bird rights.
The Celtics have had a great offseason, even though they haven't made any moves. They didn't need to.
No.
But they extended Tatum. They extended Derek White.
Yeah.
They just the other day extended Sam Hauser, the shooter off the bench. And, last year they extended Brown. They brought in Porzingis, extended him. Late in the regular season, they extended Drew Holiday. So that core is locked up. And it all really goes back to that Nets trade. They wouldn't have been able to do that without that deal.
Now, a lot of people might, forget some of the names that went in that deal. When that deal was made, it looked like the Nets were getting up. They were either had to win it within 2 years because those players were getting a little older. But at the time, we're talking about Kevin Garnett, one of the best guys. That's some people put him in a top 50 or 25 list. I probably do as well. Paul Pierce, who was the heart and soul of the Boston Celtics from the day he was drafted.
Yeah, even though those guys were on the wrong side of 30, they were 2
Those were their guys.
Two of the best players of the 2000s.
Yeah, I mean, they won a title.
Yeah.
Right, together. They brought Boston a title when Garnett came aboard. They traded them to the Nets, and it looked like the Nets were putting this super team together, and it just blew up in their faces. It never worked out, and they weren't thinking about down the road.
The best they got was a second-round appearance where they lost.
But then when they lost to the Bulls,
I believe they lost to Chicago.
Yeah, Mitchell Robinson was nailing threes that series.
They just escaped the Toronto Raptors in round 1 in 7 games, and then they lost to Chicago, and that's when it just all blew up. Paul Pierce walked that free agency.
Yeah.
The next season, they were playing bad. Garnett was traded back to Minnesota.
Back to T-Wolves where he started.
And then, within a couple of years, all those guys were gone. Lopez was gone. Darren Williams was gone. Joe Johnson was gone.
Like I said, on paper, you had a lot. Joe Johnson had a lot of big years with the Nets stuff. It just seemed like none of these guys had these big years together. It seemed like they had good years, and then some other, they were either hurt or had bad years when somebody else had a good year. Never solidified that core, right?
They were a couple years too late on Pierce and Garnett.
Mm-hmm.
And, Lopez, I believe, was hurt a big chunk of that year. Darren Williams wasn't the guy he was the couple seasons before in New
that,
Jersey.
He was a superstar over there,
coming
from the Utah.
And then New Jersey. Darren Williams, he was in those conversations with Chris Paul, who's the best point guard in the league.
He was a big-time pickup for
after the move to Brooklyn, he was still good for a couple of years, but he wasn't that mega star that they needed him to be.
Yeah. So that, to me, as a Knick fan, I look at that trade and I see, hopefully it doesn't happen, but I see similarities because they're putting off these deals 2030 and all of these, late first, down the road first round picks that they're pushing off. So even if the Knicks play well but don't win a ring, they may be really bad in 5 years, 6 years, whatever, looking at down the road, these picks that they gave up. So, to me, when you trade a slew of first-round picks, like every other year because of the rule from Isaiah, who traded every first-round pick as a Knicks president and GM, you're setting yourself up for maybe years of mediocrity or lottery type of scenarios, right? Look at Brooklyn has never done well after that. What did they make? One playoff appearance since that team?
They've had 2. They had they've had 3. They had
but nothing.
They had they made that trade. They made the playoffs those next 2 years. The first year with them, and then the second year they were the 8th seed.
Sounds like a spaceship's taking off.
And then they broke that. They broke that team up. They were rebuilding without actually being able to rebuild.
They made the playoffs that one year with
D'Angelo Russell.
We went to that playoff game, against Philly.
Yeah, and
Simmons was on Philly then. Yeah.
And then they were able to make the playoffs twice with the Durant, Harden, and Irving years. They made it. They got injured that in 2021, which was probably their chance to win the title. The Bucks ended up winning that year.
With that big...
the injuries happened, and then the next year was the year of Kyrie not being able to play in Brooklyn because he wouldn't get the vaccine. Harden got out of there.
But that's a franchise that just can't get out of its own way, and I think it all stemmed from that trade with the Celtics, which the Knicks basically, I think, even one-upped as many picks. I think they've given up more than the Nets did.
Yeah, Brooklyn gave up their 2015, 17, and
the swap.
2015, 17, and 18, or something like that. I think it was 3 firsts and
3 unprotected firsts, and then a swap. Right?
Yeah, no. So it was they gave up their 2014 first unprotected, which ended up being James Young, who did nothing.
Oh, okay.
That was like the mid pick. It was like in the 15, 16. Then the 2016 unprotected was Jaylen Brown.
Yeah.
2017 swap was Tatum. And then 2018 they traded for Kyrie Irving, the Celtics.
Which at the time was a good deal.
Yeah, ended up becoming Colin Sexton, who's a decent player.
They traded the other Isaiah Thomas, who was great, but he was injured. The hip, he never recovered from that injury.
No.
So the Celtics got what they could out of him. And at the time, Kyrie was the top of the line.
Kyrie Irving
could still be at some point.
And was, I think, 25 or 26 at the
yeah,
time.
it was,
so
it was a no-brainer.
He fit your window. He was young. And that was before everyone knew he was a bit nutty.
He was a little out there, yeah. I mean, he didn't show that as much with the Cavs, but he started to show it with Boston and with Brooklyn. And it seems like he's calmed down now with Dallas, and he had a pretty good run with them last year.
Kind of poetically lost to
the Celtics.
Boston.
Yeah. The thing that's what I think with. Okay, so now Boston traded superstars that gave the Nets instant credibility to win a title. Maybe they were older, it didn't work out. Beasley is not that type of player.
Bridges.
Bridges. I always call him Malik Beasley, who's another NBA guy, ex-NBA guy. Bridges is not this elite player, and they're not looking for him to be either. I'm not trying to say that, but when you trade that many picks, shouldn't you get back some kind of special player? Not just a guy who's maybe the third or fourth option with the ball on the floor.
No, that's how I would want.
I'm
fine with trading draft picks for a superstar.
For a big shot, yeah.
Or, like I said, I don't hate the move, but I think they overpaid. And there's no denying that they overpaid.
Big time overpay on that. Big time.
So they'll be a good team. And, they have a good defensive unit with Anunoby, Bridges, Hart, and I think they could make it tough for a team like Boston or Philly, Milwaukee, whoever it is. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if I just don't think that's the roster to win a title.
I don't think it makes them better than those teams.
I think they still need another real star. Maybe Bridges could grow into that in a good system, but
it's possible.
The problem is now it's hard to get that star because you don't have the draft picks. Going into the year, you were thinking maybe if a superstar becomes available in a trade, we've got a lot of draft picks, and we've got the contract of Julius Randle, who was hurt last year when they were making this run. Yeah. And you go, I don't know if Randle's the best fit in New York, so you go, hey, we have an all-star here on a decent contract, plus draft picks. That's a really good package for a superstar if one comes available.
A top guy.
Now you don't have those draft picks. You still have Randle, who's a nice asset, or could just be a good player for you.
Teams want picks.
Yeah, but teams want draft picks. They don't want a contract.
And I give Brunson credit. They said he left a lot of money on the table to stay there. I'm still not sold on Brunson being this great, amazing superstar. He had a great year. Played very well the year before that. He shined on the biggest stage in the playoffs. He played through injuries and pain and still played well. But I don't put him in the category of Jaylen Brown or any of these, big-time guys. I don't look at him and say, wow, this guy is, the top 5 or something in the league. I just don't. I see a hard-working, good player. But he's not the super. So who's the superstar on the Knicks? Do they have one, or are they just
Brunson's
lunch
the
pail
closest
guys?
Thing they have to it. I like Brunson. I think he's a top 20 player.
But that doesn't mean you're a ring guy.
The thing we just talked about, someone similar, who Brunson reminds me of, are those best years of Isaiah Thomas. A small point guard who scored.
Detroit Pistons Thomas.
No,
Boston's Thomas. Okay.
A very good small guard.
Can light it up. Can light it up. 50 in the playoffs like
who
Brunson.
Can explode for 40, 50, even 60 almost on some nights, especially in a league where scoring's high.
Yeah.
And I really like Brunson like that, but the small guards just do not last, and that's probably my fear for the Knicks. Even though Brunson is more crafty, he doesn't need that burst as much.
Yeah.
And you lose that step, and you guys are able to block your shot much easier. It's hard to be that superstar long term. So I worry down the line, 3 years from now, is Brunson going to stay healthy and be, that guy who can get you 30 on any night? I just don't know if it's possible.
And maybe it's good they didn't give him this crazy max money because I don't think he's that type. Jaylen Brown and the other
Tatum.
Jason. How did I put Jason Tatum? Brown and Tatum to me are just like automatic top max contracts. You don't even give it a
I think
second
even with
thought.
Tatum had some struggles in the playoffs. They both
It didn't
have
matter.
proven
It's
themselves.
just a fantastic player all around. I mean, he's just a long, lean, fast guy. He can shoot inside, outside. He can play defense. He's all over the floor.
Great passer.
Both of those guys, everything they do is top.
And that's why they're champions.
And that's why it took them a little while to grow into that. But,
I mean,
they found the right
There were
combo.
growing pains. There was time where, like, especially coming after the disappointing loss to Miami last year, there was a lot of questions of,
are they gonna?
Is Jaylen Brown worth the contract extension? You know,
Well, we had to find out, and
at
then
the
he got
time,
it.
I wasn't a big fan of that contract extension. I didn't hate it. You know, I figured it's better than losing him in free agency.
Sure. Yeah.
But I thought it was a pretty big overpay at the time. Next year, the next season he wins Finals MVP, leads you to a title. No one cares that you're paying him maybe a few million too much a year.
Yeah. So, didn't Brown win the MVP?
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Jaylen Brown. Okay.
I'm saying Jaylen Brown when he got his extension last year. After that really bad series.
Tatum got it after the championship this year.
After that bad series.
Yeah, because Brown,
Miami.
to me, I always looked at Tatum as the better of the two, maybe just because he's the bigger guy, and a lot of times
I still think Tatum is the all-around better player, but Brown had the better playoffs.
Brown was, he deserved that MVP without a doubt. He was fantastic. Tatum was a little banged up, but so Brown was able to take on that extra responsibility when Tatum was not couldn't play as many minutes or as effectively.
And especially, Porzingis
was out.
Porzingis really gave you 2 games in the playoffs, 3 games,
and he wasn't nearly 100%.
You know, that game 1 of the finals, he looked great. Game 2, he was
and that was it.
But that's really all you got out of him. I mean, that last game he played, but you could see he was in a ton of pain. He was moving at 50% speed.
The first game he had 20-some or 30.
Yeah, he was great. That had those big block shots.
Yeah, but that took all the wind out of his sails because he was not healthy. You can see he left it all out on the floor. Which is,
he cemented himself for that.
You're going into next season with that same roster, and you have a healthy Porzingis, hopefully.
Yeah,
he was healthy a lot of the year.
And Porzingis is going to miss probably the first month or 2 of the season. He had surgery on that injury. But you don't care.
Get away with that in basketball.
Especially because Al Horford continues to be...
This guy has just been... this become the Celtics show. But Al Horford has just been a great... over his whole career. I mean, we were starting with Atlanta when they drafted him, and then... Celtics, Philly, back to the Celtics. I mean, he's just been an amazing player, two-way player for them. A great, smart move bringing him back there. I think that was a excellent move. Any other off-season moves that have piqued your interest this year so far? And we talked about the main ones with the bigger names like Paul George moving around with Russell Westbrook.
One of the interesting ones is Klay Thompson to Dallas. A team who fell to Boston in the finals. Really, the finals were kind of showing that even though they had a great playoff run, they weren't on that level of Boston. They just were a level or 2 beneath them. But
Doncic kind of
had some injuries, was moving slow.
Yeah, a lot of
He scored a lot. He got some nice assists, but his defense was bad.
Yeah, he just didn't look like he was leaving it all out on the floor.
No, but now the team brings in Klay Thompson in the offseason.
And he wasn't happy with Golden State, the way they kind of, just...
He felt that Golden State prioritized other people over him, and he thought, even though there's been a lot of injuries and decline in his play,
the thing with him, is health.
He thought that he had kind of garnered that respect of, I was a cog in your dynasty.
Oh, it was Curry and Thompson. Those were the two, just like the Celtics 2 guys, those were the 2 guys with the Warriors dynasty.
I was a big cog in a dynasty. Yeah. He felt that he had earned, even despite the shaky years, that money.
Renewal,
And they were not budging on his contract, and they weren't making him a priority, so he said, well, don't bother anymore. I'm going to look elsewhere. And it wasn't even, maybe we'll let you match. It was set in stone he was leaving.
Now, when the money he got from the Mavs, did they report, was it the Golden State offers anywhere in that neighborhood?
I don't think they had this offseason. I think they made an extension somewhat similar last offseason, but only 2 years, and he declined
He
it.
wanted 4 or
He
something.
wanted 3 plus. He ended up getting 3 from Dallas.
He got 3 from that. What is he making? Do you remember what the numbers were?
I don't remember the exact.
But it
like
can't
3
be-
for 50, maybe around that. 350 something.
His injury history has to have Dallas. You know, you can't guarantee that much money to a guy that you think is going to miss
and
half the time.
I don't know
maybe.
if I love that fit because you're going to have Irving, Doncic, and Thompson.
They all like to shoot.
Yeah, they all like to shoot, but I think the bigger concern's on the defensive end. That's 3 guys who aren't big, and you got teams, again, like a team like Boston running out 6'8", 6'9" wings, and you're going to have Thompson or Doncic guarding them.
Yeah.
And that's not an easy thing to do. So I like the risk take for them, make a big move after you make the finals.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that was the right move to make.
Yeah, he can hit 3-pointers in his sleep, that guy.
Yeah.
He was just magical.
Yeah, and maybe they
team.
think he brings us more championship experience, too.
He's got the experience. He seems to be a likable guy. You
Yeah.
know, that Warriors team, other than Draymond, but not against his teammates, I mean, league-wide, it seems like Draymond was the only, like, villain, if you will.
Yeah.
Most of those other guys, like Curry especially, very likable type of players, and Thompson was kind of like the Batman and Robin, kind of his sidekick and went along with everything. That'll be interesting to see.
Maybe the last move to interest before the show
we got about a minute
would
and a
be
half.
Chris Paul heading to San Antonio.
That one I like a lot because I think San Antonio is a sleeper.
Yeah, I think Wembanyama, I mean, sky's the limit. He might just walk into the next year and be a top 5 player already.
He might be the Greek Freak 2.0.
Yeah, I mean,
he was great last year.
Yeah, I mean, he almost won Defensive Player of the Year as a rookie.
Probably
on
should have
top
won it.
of everything he does.
He probably should have beat Booker in that, but I don't know if they
You
wanted
beat Gobert.
Gobert. What? Yeah.
On top of everything he does offensively.
This is why I got him on the second mic. He should be the first.
On top of everything he does offensively, you know, he's just such an excellent player.
Great player.
And bringing in a leader, you know, a true point guard for Chris Paul, even though it's only going to be a year.
But he's going to feed the ball into that big man underneath who's got good finesse. And he had, I mean, when you watched him last year, that was a guy that was very impressive. I think San Antonio is a team that everybody is not even thinking about, and I think they're going to have a good year. Are they title contenders? Of course not.
But they might sneak into the playoffs.
They might make the playoffs. I think there's a lot of upside to that team, and bringing a guy like Paul shows you that they feel the same way, because that's a veteran team that expects to win. We got to leave it there, Jimmy. Another good night. I'm glad. Thank you for sitting in for Anthony. And then happy 1-year anniversary to MuscleSport Media Live. Hopefully one of many right here on WGBB. For Anthony, I'm Joe. We'll see you guys next week.
Noah, I have a job for you.
Jeez, it's not another arc, is it?
No, not again. This time I need a full-scale home renovation.
Noah Construction and Builders is your design and build partner. We do it all, from additions and dormers to full-scale renovations. Schedule your no-cost design consultation today. Visit us online at noahconstruction-builders.com.
Noah Construction and Builders through Dream. Noah, I have a job for you.
Jeez, it's not another arc, is it?
No, not again. This time I need a full-scale home renovation.
Noah Construction and Builders is your design and build partner. We do it all, from additions and dormers to full-scale renovations. Schedule your no-cost design consultation today. Visit us online at noahconstruction-builders.com.
Noah Construction and Builders through dreams we design with vision we build.